It is collecting lymph down in this region and taking the lymph all the way up, so it's going to dump into veins in the neck. And then there's various lymph nodes and stuff strewn throughout the superior mediastinum. Okay, so this is the superior mediastinum, right? There's your superior vena cava, brachiocephalic veins. There's the arch of the aorta. Okay, there's the left common carotid, left subclavian up here, brachiocephalic trunk over here. There's your pulmonary trunk, but that's just still in the top of it's in the middle mediastinum. There's a vagus nerve coming down from the neck through the superior mediastinum in here, giving rise to this recurrent laryngeal, which is going to loop around and then head back up there. There you can see it again. And then the rest of the vagus continues down to go onto the esophagus. There's the esophagus lying on the back wall. There's your descending aorta. The arch of the aorta is in the superior mediastinum, and then the descending aorta is in the posterior mediastinum. Okay, so there's a lot going on up in here. The problem we have, of course, there's your transverse thoracic plane. That's the bottom of the manubrium. In these bodies, we've cut the manubrium in half. So a lot of this superior mediastinum is sort of blocked by the remains of the manubrium and the where they attach with the clavicles. Try to look as much as you can from under there, maybe grab the manubrium and try to pry it up just a little bit so that you can see these structures extending up in there. We will get back to these structures, particularly these vessels coming off the arch of the aorta, when we do the neck. We kept the manubrium, the top of the manubrium and clavicles in there because that's where a lot of neck muscles attach, and we want you to be able to see that. If we whack the clavicles out, you get to see better, more superior mediastinum, but then when you get to the neck, it's going to look like a disaster. So do your best to sort of poke up in there. Obviously, you'll see the vagus nerve coming out. You'll see the brachiocephalic veins coming out to join the superior vena cava. If you follow the arch of the aorta, you might see the bases of these major vessels. Obviously, you'll see your phrenic nerve coming down. So it's a bit of a challenge with this dissection, but like I say, it's the price you pay for keeping the neck intact. Then there's the posterior mediastinum, which is the area below this transverse thoracic plane, all the way down behind the middle mediastinum. Okay, so what are we going to find in there? Well, your aorta is going to have an arch, and then the descending aorta is going to zoom all the way down and go into the abdomen. The blood supply to the back wall of the thorax is coming off of the aorta. So there's a whole bunch of, remember those posterior intercostal arteries that we saw in a typical thoracic spinal nerve. They are coming out of this descending aorta. You'll see them at each level. One going here, one going on the other side. The azygous system of veins is collecting the blood from this area and is collecting the blood from those posterior intercostal veins, right? If you got arteries coming out to supply blood, you got to have veins taking the deoxygenated blood back. Okay, so at every costal level, you're going to have little bitty intercostal veins, and they're going to dump into this azygous system, which I'll talk about a little more in a minute. There are two sets of veins, one on the right and one on the left. There's the esophagus running down the back there, going from the throat, like I say, down to the stomach. Comes through the superior mediastinum and then comes through the posterior mediastinum. The bronchi are back here, behind the heart here, right? Your main bronchi. Your vagus nerve is going to come down in the superior mediastinum. Right at this junction here, it's going to send the recurrent laryngeal, but then the vagus will continue all the way down, mostly around the esophagus. So that's the esophageal plexus and the anterior and posterior vagus trunk. So your vagus nerve comes down here, and then it sort of wraps around the esophagus. That thoracic duct, which is carrying lymph from down here up to the neck, passes through the posterior mediastinum and then through the superior mediastinum going up into the neck. There is a sympathetic trunk. As we know, everywhere from T1 all the way down to, well, actually there's sympathetic trunks from C1 or superior cervical ganglion all the way down. And you can particularly see it along the side of the thorax, because you pull these organs out of the way and you'll see these individual ganglia connected by the trunk of ascending and descending fibers. Then there are these thoracic splanchnic nerves. So are nerves that are coming from T5, T6, T7, T8, T9, coming out of the sympathetic trunk and just cruising across the back of the posterior mediastinum, heading towards the midline down in the abdomen. And they're very easy to find. And then there's various lymph nodes and stuff. Okay. So here is the picture. Here was our superior mediastinum that we just saw. Here's the posterior mediastinum, the area below there. So there's your azygous vein with the posterior intercostals coming in there. There's your esophagus with the esophageal plexus and branches of the vagus, which are branches of the vagus wrapped around it. There was our vagus nerve coming down, sending the recurrent and then upside down. There's your thoracic duct, this lymph vessel going from top of the abdomen all the way up. So those are the main structures. Obviously, you have to pull all that pericardium that was surrounding the heart, get that out of the way so that you can see the stuff behind it. But tear it away. Don't when you. I mean, some people were trying to carve the pericardium out, and they carved the esophagus out, and all sorts of other things as well. So be sort of careful. Okay, so previously I just said azygos system. That was a euphemism. So you've got posterior intercostal veins coming in, right, all the way down at every rib level. On the right side, all is cool. They come in, and each intercostal vein dumps into the azygous vein, which travels upwards, loops around, called the arch of the azygos, which you saw impressed on the lung, and dumps into the superior vena cava. Really nice. On the left side, it can't make up its mind. It's gonna, the blood from the left side intercostals also have to end up back here into the superior vena cava, because that's the only way to get blood from the upper part of the body into the heart. So all the venous blood from the upper part of the body has to go in through the superior vena cava. So down in the lower part of the posterior mediastinum, lower part of the thorax, you get a few intercostals, posterior intercostals come along, and then 3 or 4 join together and say, okay, we got to end up into this azygos, so they'll zip across and join the azygos here. And then a little bit higher, the next 3 or 4 posterior intercostals will come together and say, okay, we got to get on the other side to the superior vena cava, so they'll go across there. And then these ones in the upper part of the thorax, some of them will say, well, I'm going to join these guys and go across to the azygos. And some of them will say, nah, it's easier to go up to the brachiocephalic, so I'm just going to go up there. So right side is easy, left side there's lots of combinations. This part is called the hemiazygous system, and the lower one's called the hemiazygous vein, the middle one's called the accessory hemiazygous vein, and then this one's either superior intercostals, and it may or may not be connected to the other ones. These are often hard to find. Yes?
How in detail do we need to know the complications of the exam?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
How in detail do we need to know the complications of the left side of the exam?
You don't. If it is on here, it's either an intercostal or part of the hemiazygous system. Okay, you don't have to distinguish between the accessory and the hemiazygous vein. But if you know it's on the left side. But I will tell you to beware, because although in all the diagrams it's really nice, there's sort of midline stuff, right? And right stuff and left stuff. But sometimes in humans, these things will get shoved over. So your azygous vein, you may trace these posterior intercostals on the right and find your azygous veins already on the other side of this vertebra. Or the hemiazygous may have slid over. So be careful. Realize that this collecting stuff is the azygous, but it's not necessarily on the right side of the vertebrae. It can sometimes slide up onto the top of the vertebrae, so things can shift in position. Okay, so there are sort of two sides of the posterior mediastinum. It's called the red side and the blue side. The red side is obviously the left side, where you have this massive thoracic aorta, and where you have these hemiazygous vein and accessory hemiazygous vein draining the intercostals. You have intercostal arteries that are coming off of the descending aorta. Okay, you have your left vagus nerve on the left side. You have your left bronchus, your left part of the pulmonary artery, and you can see, bits of the esophagus. That's what you see over on the left-hand side, and the sympathetic trunk on this side, and the intercostal nerves, which are the same as ventral rami in this region, going out in that direction. On the other side, the blue side, the right side, you have all these intercostal veins going into the azygous vein, which is coming up and then has its arch and dumping into superior vena cava. Again, you can see the esophageal plexus, the esophagus, sympathetic trunk on the right side, little rami communicans there, and ventral rami. Just the same structures. These are many of the same structures you see in the superior vena cava. Most of the structures you see in the superior mediastinum, you also see in the posterior mediastinum, because it's just a continuation. And just since nerves are the theme of the day, realize that in the mediastinum you have the phrenic nerves, which we will see later when we do the neck. Comes from C3, 4, 5. Okay, and then they pass down through the superior mediastinum, okay, around the middle mediastinum, where they wrap around the pericardial sac and go into the diaphragm. Okay, you've got vagus nerves coming from the brain up here, coming out, going down through the neck, through the superior mediastinum. Part of them are looping back up in the superior mediastinum to go to the larynx, and then the rest of the vagus continues down, wraps around the esophagus, becomes a esophageal plexus, and continues through. You have sympathetic trunks on both sides, lying right against the thoracic vertebrae. You coming off of these sympathetic trunks on both sides are these splanchnic nerves, which are preganglionics, and that are going down to the abdomen. And then we saw there's the cardiac plexus, okay, wrapping around the upper part of the great vessels. Okay, a couple of housekeeping, as people call it. This is the last lecture before the exam. I know it's all sad, but we made up for it by going for an hour and 45 minutes. There is no lecture tomorrow. There will be a practice lab exam, and then there will be we will be wandering around to answer questions and help you. Gee, I never quite saw the such and such. Can you show me the iliocostalis muscle or whatever? The lab exam, we know you people are getting tired of us examining you, so we're going to let you examine each other. Just the cadavers. So when you come in tomorrow, there will be a sign posted, or maybe I'll show a slide in the lab, so that table 1 will be asked to pin a back muscle, or 2 back muscles, 2 pins for each table. And table 2 will be added, maybe pin something on the inside of the heart. Table 3 may be asked to pin something on the hilum of the lungs, and so forth. And so each of you at your table will make an exam. And you'll have a little piece of paper, and you'll have a red pen stuck in one structure, and you'll say number 6, red pen, or number 7, blue pen. Just like the practice exam we made for you yesterday, we're going to let each of you We will assign you some part of the body to pin some structures. We'll go through to make sure that the structures are clear and easy. And then you can go around at your leisure from table to table for the rest of the lab to make sure you can identify these structures. And if you have a problem, you can either ask the people who pinned it why it's what it is, or you can raise your hand and we'll help you. It'll be pretty loose. Yes?
Do we come in at 1 or 2 tomorrow?
We will be down there from 1 because you got to spend the first half hour putting the pins in your cadaver for your former friends. Second, hey, we're not done yet. Come on. This is going to go on forever. We got another 3 hours here. Friday, there is an exam, in case you haven't noticed. The first part will be the lab exam. Okay, and we will do it not unlike what we did yesterday. We will give everybody, you will gather outside the lab, and we'll give everybody an answer sheet with the right number of blank spaces. And one of those numbers will be circled. Okay, there will be 4 pins at each station, but you travel in pairs. Right? So 2 of you will be on one side of the body with questions 1 and 2, for example. You will have 1.5 minutes to answer it independently, not as a group. Then we will say next station, and you'll move to the other side of that table and answer questions 3 and 4. Then we'll say next station, and that pair will move to the next table over and answers questions 5 and 6, and so forth, till you go around. Everyone has gone all the way around. So there will be 2 of you at each side of a table, and there will be 2 questions at that side, and so you'll both do that, and we'll circulate until everybody has done all the questions. Okay, and just keep tabs of where you are. Don't look at the person who's standing next to you trying to answer the same things, and realize that at each side there will be 2 pins in there somewhere, and it'll, one will be here. We try to keep 1 here and 1 here to some extent, so that you're not looking in. But some of these structures are small. After that, and that should take maybe about an hour-ish or less. Then you will go to lecture hall 2, where you will have a written exam. And in general, you have 2 hours to do that. It shouldn't be a problem. It's going to be easy and really short. Right?
Easy?
No, there won't be anything on there